We are live.
Yay, we're here, we're live.
Just welcome everybody. We, Dr. Kara Gubbins, who is a wild dolphin biologist and an expert animal communicator, and myself, Allecia Evans, who's an expert animal communicator. Thank you for joining us. We decided to put together a wild dolphin online experience for you. And we're pretty excited. We had a lot of people sign up, and we got together after Dr. Kara's incredible Animal Communicator and Healer Summit. And we started talking, and the next thing I know, Dr. Kara said, "Let's do a wild dolphin trip." And I said, "Okay." let's
it was just like that too.
It was just like that. So we just decided there's an incredible synergy that the two of us happen to have around dolphins and experiences that we've had. And we got so excited about it. We said, well, can we actually do like a live experience, like instead of a challenge? Because I think a lot of us on the planet are facing enough challenges today. Can we actually have an experience where we could help our viewers tap into the energy of the wild dolphins? And we had put out a question on Facebook to ask fellow Facebookers, if you could ask a question to the dolphins, what would you ask them? And we got some really cool responses. So we just decided to create this live experience for you. And we're going to talk about dolphin biology today. And we're going to take you on a little journey from biology to bliss. And then we'll lead that into an experience of a channeling with the dolphins. And we'll hear what they actually have to say.
And you're kind of because you were connecting with the dolphins already this morning. So you're kind of like the parent on Christmas Eve going, I know what you're getting.
I feel like the whatever you put on top of the Christmas tree that's got the light, like tapping the dolphins this morning, I was like, bing! Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
It's awesome. Yeah. It's super fun to kind of expand ourselves this way with when we've never done this before. We've never, collaborated before. We've never done a Facebook Live like this before. We never put all these pieces together before. So it's super fun to go, wow, here's a cool thing. Can we do it? And then we figured out how to do it. So fingers crossed.
We goddesses. I don't, nothing personal and not to be political, but I think the goddesses are trying to show up. The technology gods, sometimes they war with each other. The technology goddesses, they seem to flow. So even the technology goddesses are on our sides today.
I know, it's crazy. Everything's actually working.
It's working, it's easy. And we're so excited that you are all here. And so shall we, why don't we give a little bit about our backgrounds, like who we are and how we came to working with the dolphins, and maybe one or two of our own personal experiences with them. And then let's go right into dolphin biology from there. And then we can go into a channeling with the dolphin.
Sounds good. You want to start? You want to tell everybody who you are?
Sure. My name is Allecia Evans. My clients lovingly refer to me as the animal healer. I have always loved animals, always wanted to be a veterinarian, and math and science came in and that wasn't going to happen. But in my early 20s, I had the honor of working with a Chinese energy master and started studying a practice called Qigong. And Qigong led me to open up certain energy centers and energy gates. And as a result, I remembered my depth of love for wanting to help animals heal, and landed up in Hawaii on a trip that involved animal communication and dolphins. And it was on that trip in 1997 that I literally had a dolphin hang right in front of me and communicate with me. And it was just kind of startling because we were just in the bay. So there was no food involved. There was nothing, totally free experience. And it opened up my animal communication gifts. So I've been doing this for the last 25 years. I'm also a holistic dog trainer, a medical intuitive, and a distance energy healer, and a soul relationship coach. And you can find out about my work in a book called Soul Dog, which was the inspiration for that book when I helped the author heal her giant poodle who was told he couldn't walk. So I've had many experiences with the dolphins in Hawaii and Costa Rica, and I'm just so honored to be here with Dr. Kara, and I'm so honored to be sharing the wisdom of the dolphins with you guys and bringing you into this energy field.
Awesome. It's so interesting how similar our paths are, how, the dolphins really touched both of our lives so profoundly. For me, it was watching Jacques Cousteau on television when I was a kid. And I just fell in love with dolphins, and I just wanted to be one. And so I just spent every waking moment underwater, like in the bathtub, at the pool, at the lake, wherever it was. I was just always underwater. And so when I went to college, I decided I was going to study dolphin biology. And I ended up not studying it in college, but I volunteered at SeaWorld and got close to the animals and, spent time with dolphins. And it wasn't until my master's degree that I really, really got to make that dream come true. And I should probably back up. I missed a really important piece, which was in high school. I got to be a volunteer on a research boat in the Bahamas studying wild dolphin behavior. And that was, for me, the pivotal moment of, in some ways, my whole life was swimming with wild dolphins and just being in their little social groups and becoming part of their pod. And there was a moment where I was swimming with 3 dolphins, and they were like all around me on either side and above, and there might have been one down underneath as well. And I looked to my right, and all I could see was this huge eye, and it was the dolphin next to me. And we looked into each other's souls, and part of me was changed forever in that moment because I saw her soul, and I knew that she saw mine, and I could never again not see that in another being. And that's what really drove me to go to college. And then I got my master's degree. I studied environmental enrichment for captive dolphins at Steinhardt Aquarium. And I studied the development of baby dolphins and their moms at Marine World. And I knew I had to get back out to the wild dolphins. So for my PhD, I studied wild dolphins in South Carolina and looked at their social structure and their behavior and their interactions and their different cultural traditions within their different social groups. So it was a really, really rich society and a really amazing time of discovery for me and just really kind of living with dolphins inside and out. And then I decided I wanted to be a mom. And so things changed a little bit. And now my kids are going to high school, and I have a lot more flexibility and freedom in my schedule. So I'm just kind of reopening that dolphin door and, getting my dolphin fix wherever I can. And today it's, here with you on the Facebook Live. And yet, like, our first conversation has spurred so many more dolphin ideas. It's like, well, we're going to go to the Bahamas this year, and we've got Hawaii next year, and Costa Rica for sure is on the list.
That was one of, I didn't mention it, but I lived on the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica, and one day we got a call from a neighboring hotel that a dolphin had beached itself. And the reason why I was in Costa Rica, I was living at a eco lodge called the Wild Dolphin, and Sierra Goodman, who's an amazing woman, she was researching the numbers of dolphins and whales and all the different species that came through the area. And one day there was a call about a baby dolphin getting stranded. And so in Costa Rica, we landed up at the only place on the whole peninsula that had a saltwater pool. There were a couple of guys that formed like a human arm link, and we brought this baby dolphin up into the pool and literally like held her for it was about 24 hours till the veterinarians from San Jose could come. So Costa Rica is a super special place, as is Hawaii and all of these places where the dolphins live. When you said that, I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot.
Yeah. So, but that's us, and we're not here for us.
We're not here for you.
For everybody, all the beautiful people who have joined us who want to connect more deeply with the dolphins, right?
Yeah.
But that's just part of, our background and our love and our passion for these animals who are just, beyond wonderful.
And the energy of play. And can we talk about the actual biology of the dolphins?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Part. Well, maybe not my favorite part, but science nerd that I am, I love natural history, and I love learning about it. And the thing that I want to do today is not just talk about the biology, but also this is where my two loves merge, and that's spiritual growth and development and natural nature, basically nature. And what I've been finding over the last several years of talking to animals is that their biology determines their spiritual lessons. And that's, kind of the marriage that we're doing here with this whole 3 Facebook Live event that we're doing is we're going to start with the biology, but we're going to also be moving into the spiritual growth piece and how we can receive wisdom from the dolphins, how we can become our best selves, and how we can, become our best planet, because clearly we've got some work to do there. So taking some action. But yeah, so that's kind of like my little happy place is the the overlap between the biology and the spiritual. So let's talk about dolphins. Many people know, most people probably know that dolphins are cetaceans, and cetaceans include the dolphins and the whales. And so if you're a cetacean, you're either a mysticete and you have baleen, you're one of the big baleen whales, or you're an odonocete and you have teeth. And there's many different kinds of odonocetes, but there are 30 species of dolphin odonocetes. So there's also other kinds of odonocetes. So that's the family Delphinidae. So these are all dolphins. And about 5 of those species are in the same genus as the spotted dolphins that we're going to be swimming with in the Bahamas this fall. And that's the genus Stenella. So, whenever you say the scientific name of an animal, you've got 2 words, and that's the genus name and the species name. And so in the genus, there are 5 species of dolphins, and those are 2 species of spotted dolphins, the spinner dolphins, the striped dolphins, and I'm not never sure how to say this one, but the Clymene, I think, Clymene, Clymene dolphins. So they're all really closely related to each other. And these guys are very kind of medium size. They're not really big. They're not really small compared to other dolphins. They're kind of just right in the middle. The Atlantic spotted dolphins that live in the Bahamas, which is who we're focusing on this week, are the spotted dolphins. So they're Atlantic spotted dolphins, and they are like living through pretty much the whole middle range of the Atlantic Ocean, from North and South America all the way over to Europe and Africa. So from Spain south on that side. And from probably like the middle, like North Carolina, Virginia, that area, the United States, down to a little bit of South America. So they're everywhere in the Atlantic Ocean. And they only reach about 7.5 feet. So males and females are both about the same size. Males get a little heavier, females a little bit less heavier, but they're around 300 pounds. For comparison, most people recognize bottlenose dolphins because that's Flipper and the dolphin that we see the most in captivity. Those guys are about 8 or 9 feet long, but they weigh 700 or 800 pounds on average. So the spotted dolphins are very agile, very graceful, very lean, very sleek dolphins compared to the bottlenose dolphins. So they're about a third of the weight. And another kind of cool thing about the spotted dolphins is that they're born without spots. So calves, calves are born with, they look like bottlenose dolphins. They're gray on the top and they're white on the bottom. And we can talk more about that later. That's a whole thing that I studied for my master's degree, the coloring and why the coloring and all that kind of stuff. But so they're born gray with a white belly, and their moms take care of them and nurse them for up to 4 years. And during that time, they stay that same color phase. And then around 3 or 4 years old, they start to get these dots and spots. And so those guys are called speckled. So if you ever see spotted dolphins and a big group of them, you can start to figure out who everybody is and how old they are based on how much spotting they have. And then the next phase is the mottled. And the mottled are like from 8 or 9 years old to adult. So they are starting to have bigger and bigger spots that start to merge together. And they have, it's kind of cool, they have light spots on the back and dark spots on their belly. And then eventually those all go fuse together and that becomes fused. So these are the very mature adults who are probably reproductive and having babies of their own, but the fused age is adults older than 10 years, basically. So their whole body looks like it's black with white spots, and they're much, much darker. And the picture that we had of a woman swimming with dolphins, those are all those fused. So that was a big group of adult spotted dolphins. Okay, I feel like I'm talking too much.
How old are dolphins? I'm going to ask like 3 questions. How old are dolphins when they mate, approximately? How long do dolphins live in the wild? And how long, like, will the pods, like, will the babies and the moms and the dad, like, do they always stay together and grow their pod? Or do they go off kind of like wolves or other animals and start their own families?
Great questions. And unfortunately, the answers aren't super clear cut with spotted dolphins. They are with other kinds of dolphins. So
can't get them to sit still, huh? Can't get them to sit still.
Well, they have a very fission-fusion society. So there are always groups coming together and breaking apart. They tend to have these social groups of maybe 5 to 15 individuals that are almost always together. And usually they're all ages and both genders. So those social groups stay together for a long time. Mating and reproduction are 2 different things in dolphin land. So having sex starts like when babies are infants. And actually the mothers teach them about that. So you occasionally will see an actual infant having sex with its mom, and it's all part of the sociosexual behavior and teaching that the moms do. But they're not going to be reproductive until they're up into the mottled juvenile to adult color phase. So not till they're really big and spotted. And typically, as with most mammals, the dolphins, the females are sexually mature before the males. So the males are usually longer, and so she usually takes them longer too. So
not much different between dolphins and humans in that space.
Huh?
Not much is different between dolphins and humans in the male species.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you start looking at mammalian species, that's a really common pattern, that the young will stay with their family group until they're ready to move off, and then they form these juvenile herds. And that's what you see with the spotted dolphins too. They tend to stay in the multi-age group, but they kind of cluster together and then come back in to the group, and then start to disperse for mating. Denise Herzing has done the most research on spotted dolphins in the Bahamas, and I'm not sure if she's figured out a maximum lifespan or even an average lifespan, but it's definitely, typically for dolphins, it is 30 to 40 years.
A long time to be swimming without stopping.
Yeah.
Really, just from an athletic standpoint, just from a physiological standpoint, like wow. Dana has a question, and she asked, "Are dolphins and porpoises the same?"
They're not scientifically. So we talked about the family Delphinidae. Delphinidae is the 30 species of dolphins. But there's also a family Phocinidae, and those are the porpoises. So they're still odontocetes, they're still cetaceans. They're closely related, but scientifically they're two separate things. The porpoises tend to be much smaller. They have a different lifespan, different social group. They have a different diet. Their teeth are different. So the Delphinidae, their teeth are very conical and pointed because they're grasp and swallow feeders, and they're typically getting fish and squid and stuff like that. The Phocinidae, the porpoises, they look like these little flat shovel teeth. So like they're kind of more flat like our teeth are rather than pointy like the dolphin teeth are. And right now in this moment, I can't remember what they eat that makes sense for them to have teeth like that. But their diet is different enough that their teeth are different. They live in typically colder water. They are more short and round with short noses, short rostrums. So they look kind of like their faces are pushed in like little pug dolphins or something like that. Whereas dolphins have the longer rostrums.
Aww. And what is, in terms of our planet, in terms of our ecosystem, I know that when I was a kid and I grew up, I watched Flipper, right? So it's like, oh, now as a kid growing up in the Bronx, hoping someday, somehow, some way, I would see and meet dolphins. So in my little world back then, I didn't understand like what I want to say what porpoise the dolphins have like on the planet. Like why is it important in terms of our environment, in terms of our planetary health? What is it about the dolphins and kind of like their specific role in our ecosystem? Do we I would probably say these days more than any others because there's so much, consumption. There's so many things going on the planet on so many different fronts, and they only have one ocean to live in. So could you share with us kind of like what, from a biological perspective, what are the dolphins' main purpose?
Well, ecologically, they're apex predators. So they are really responsible for the health of the environment underneath them. So in a sense, they're at the top of the food chain. The only predators that they have really are sharks, and sharks aren't that successful with dolphins as prey. So they really reside at the top, and they keep the balance of everything going on beneath them. So also just the fertilization that happens, the turnover, the recycling within the ecosystem, a lot of that happens through dolphins. but they are found in dolphins in general are found pretty much everywhere except for the North and South Pole. They're in coastal water, they're in open ocean water. They are involved in the ecosystems of every ocean in the world except for at the poles. So they're important apex predators that are they could be considered a keystone species for keeping the balance of the ecology in harmony, in balance.
I kind of have chills because I don't, so like in all my interactions with them and things like that, I have never heard it put that way, the level of importance and the role that they play. I mean, I would have assumed, my assumption would have been that the whales are more, the apex predator, only because of their size, their sheer size. Definitely sharks, but that's who I would have thought. Like, it reminds me very, very much of like the wolves being the apex predator, in the northern, definitely in the northern hemisphere, and why they are so important to our ecological balance, like you said, as a keystone species. So I just kind of got chills on top of chills of like, I didn't really realize that was the place that they really hold in the oceans. I was just more like, from when I was a kid, and then communicating with them and spending time with them. But that is fascinating. That is really fascinating and huge,
Huge. I mean, think about the number of individual dolphins that there are in the world. They're super important ecologically to the health of our planet.
Right. And because they live in the oceans and because of what's going on with climate change and the warming of the oceans, it is definitely a species we need to wake up to and start protecting. Sorry, I think I have a dog hair on my face.
And they're also kind of an indicator species for humans because their diet is so similar to ours. And we can look at them and see what the toxin loads are that they have from eating the fish and the seafood, all the same kind of food that we eat from the ocean, right? Because they're the ones that are eating the bigger fish and the squids and feeding on the same things as us. So that there's that other side of it too. It's like they're our counterpart in the ocean. And so if something's going on with them based on their environment, it's also going on with us because we're, basically in the same ecological niche in all ways.
That's huge too, because, and I was going to say to you before, I was like, how's another ginormous, factor? And I'm like, 2 bombs at once, well, that's super important because again, so like when I grew up and I thought, oh, this is like dolphin and you go play with them and stuff like that. And then really recognizing the biological importance of how much we don't realize. It's not just about saving the dolphins, right? It's really about, whoa, we need to take a really serious look that when indicator species are telling us we are having a problem, if we are having a problem, you humans are having a problem, and you need to really look at your patterns of behavior, and what your patterns of behavior, how they're rippling out, so to speak. Wow. Linda she said, I thought that they were here to help balance the meridians of the ley lines of the planet. Is that us moving into the, like from biology to bliss, like, so the physical biology and then moving into the environmental biology? Like
that might be a great question for when you're channeling the dolphins, or that might be an even better question for Thursday, because that falls right in line with the stewardship. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I can ask them today. I can say what is
there today for sure.
And then Oksana said, and the crystalline grid, as well as holding the Gaia Akashic record. So those 2 questions we'll ask as we move into the spiritual side of it, because it's not that the spiritual side of it is any more or less important than the biology. It's just that in terms of the biology, there are certain very specific things we can study and observe. And then we sort of get, I guess, a little bit more into like quantum science. Is that?
I think so. I think I kind of call it spiritual science, where we can, you know, approach spiritual questions from a scientific point of view, you know, asking specific questions, getting a body of evidence, and looking at the patterns.
Yeah. And they're pretty, so Dana said, so they are like the wolves of the sea. Is it true that they prey on old and ill fish like wolves do their prey?
No, not necessarily. I think that the biology is interesting of interactions between predator and prey. And for a lot of the terrestrial animals, the predators just aren't fast enough to catch the healthy ones. It's not like they're going, hey, I'm going to do this really good thing and, you know, take out these ill or injured animals. It's like, I can't get the good ones. Like, I'm going to get whatever I can get. That's why you often see like baby wildebeests being singled out of the herd and, you know, stuff like that. So I think, you know, when you're a forager like these guys are, you get what you can get. And, you know, you want to go for the healthiest that you can get, because the healthier your food, the healthier you are. And the less you're exposed to diseases and you know, those kinds of things that may be causing problems for your prey. So I don't know of any evidence that would suggest that that's a pattern for dolphins. I just have not seen that anywhere.
Well,
it's a great question, though.
It is a great question. Yeah. Okay. So do you want to like?
You ready to do the switcheroo?
Yeah, we'll start kind of like transitioning into. I am definitely a believer in science, because I believe that science can really provide us with like a provable track record, you know, and it can the way that the observation is done, it can give us a consistency of knowledge that we weren't sure about before. And then like what I see through the sciences, it's like we have our chemical and biological sciences, we have our behavioral sciences, and we're also kind of expanding into our science of physics and the quantum energy field. So I see that we have the ways of being able to break down, you know, the actions of particular species and behaviors and things like that. And then we also have the realm of moving into the sciences. And I don't even want to say it's a spectrum, because I actually think it's like a whole big circle. It's like where it's all contained in it. It's just what parts are we looking at. And so I sense that the quantum sciences are bringing us into this like, okay, so what role are you playing in how this entire planet is, how it works? Because I don't know about you, but it's like, where's the batteries? There's no batteries, you know?
Where's the directions?
Right? And well,
the instruction manual.
Well, I think the 4 clans have the directions, and I definitely think the animals have the blueprint. So it is that fascination between what we know and we can like scientifically verifiably prove on the physical levels, and also, you know, 25% of us is physical, and we have emotions and psychology and spirit. So bringing that into the realm of science as well. But that science kind of tends to take us into like this, a little bit more of like a blissful state. Like if anybody has ever swam with dolphins, it's like it's amazing that we can know the science, and then all of a sudden you see a dolphin and you're like this little kid that can't stop cursing because you're so excited. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that, you know, what I like about quantum science right now is that able to explain a lot of phenomenon that isn't explained only with physical evidence. So a lot of the spiritual teachings that have been handed down through all the generations of humanity are now being shown to have this basis in, physical world reality that can be explained by quantum theory. And so now we finally got this intersection between science and spirituality that was really missing. It was like a big hole in our way of being in the world for Western societies, I think. And I think that's now getting plugged back in, and we, don't have to choose between science or spirituality, but now we can, look to both to support each other and understand each one better.
Yep. All right. Well.
Okay. So
let us start with some of those. Let's start with some of those questions.
So how do you want to do this?
Okay.
Do you want me to ask you the questions?
Sure. We've got Linda's question about ley lines. We've got Oksana also mentioned something about crystalline grids. And Oksana just said, I wonder why they kick out of their packs to form newborns and also injured or sick members. So what I'm going to do is, how I'd like to start it, I'm going to get quiet for a minute or two. And I'm just going to tune in to that energy. And I'm actually going to have all of us do this. Let's do it that way. So instead of me just doing it, we're all going to do it. So let's just, wherever you are, just sit back for a sec, close your eyes. And we're going to just do a little bit of a breathing exercise, not for long, just for maybe like a minute or two. But what this breathing exercise is going to do is going to allow us to drop out of our conscious mind. And we're going to start to access the pineal gland. And we're also going to just kind of drop into our subconscious awareness, which when our conscious mind is not totally active, it allows us to really be part of the quantum energy field again. So we will all have this experience, and I will just be, translating or bringing forth the information that the dolphins want to share. So take a sec to close your eyes. We're going to breathe in and out through the nose. Your shoulders are relaxed. Your jaw is soft. I can better help to play the dolphins in the world. Okay, I'll ask them that too. And let's start with inhaling into your nose and just gently filling up your belly. And then letting that air gently rise up into your chest. And then as you exhale, send your belly towards your low back. Gently knit your ribs together. And then soften and just press the air out. It goes up through your chest, out your nose, and your chest softens. So inhale, fill up your belly, your ribs, and your chest. And as you exhale, send your belly towards your low back. Your ribs gently knit together and press against your back ribs. Your chest softens and relaxes. So inhaling belly, ribs, and chest. And exhaling belly, ribs, chest. And as you're breathing, just bring your inhale and your exhale into balance. So a lot of the times we will inhale more or exhale less, or we'll inhale less and exhale more, which kind of creates an imbalance in our bodies. So just let that breathing balance out. And what you'll notice is your mind really relaxes and you just feel grounded and centered in your body, but you also feel expanded. So I'm going to start with what the dolphins, what their channel message is, because it does tie into Linda's question about the ley lines, because as I connected with them this morning, they were talking about sound and frequency. And it was really, really fascinating because they said we live in a world of frequency. So even though all of the cells connect together and we're seeing physicalness to our bodies, they literally can feel frequency running through their whole systems. So they work on frequency and vibration. Part of when they're talking with each other, when they're singing, that actually is affecting the whole, literally the whole ocean of cells and the harmonics in the entire ocean, which actually also lands up affecting the planet. So when they talked to me about frequency this morning, they said, everything really is about, if you took your thoughts and your beliefs and your emotions to a frequency level, all you have to ask yourself is, how does it make me feel? Is that frequency making me feel like small and constricted and uncomfortable? Or is it making me feel joyous and expansive and playful, kind of like a dolphin, right? And it was really interesting to sit with them this morning and to feel that energy of bliss literally running through my whole physical body. Because, as humans, we want to be happy, we want to thrive, we want to enjoy things. But there's also this, like, could we actually hold the vibration of that much bliss and kind of like what I want to call orgasmic energy? I don't mean just the orgasmic energy of having sex and having an orgasm, but I mean that like oxytocin feeling, of feeling so in love and feeling so blissful in our bodies. Would we allow ourselves to let that be the way that we choose to consciously live our lives? We grow up as kids, and they were very interesting about how Dr. Kara said something before too about, what they're teaching the kids when they're young, like even about sex and it being in as much of a healthy way. It's part of their social dynamic to have that interaction. Well, and it doesn't mean that they're having an orgasm. It just means that they're participating in this joyous sexual fluid flow of energy that doesn't necessarily mean they have to have like climax of sex. So they were sharing, they were like, what if the children in your world, what if the adults in your world grew up in this energy and this frequency? How different would the entire planet be? Because while the dolphins experience that level of bliss, we can look at any of the other animal species and everybody's got a certain frequency that they carry. But in general, it's really pretty harmonious with the planet. So they wanted us to really get a sense of, number one, if you're tuning in and you're feeling that bliss, like if you've ever swam with them before, and it's so exciting. It's just so much fun because your cells are vibrating at such a high level of, like, there's no problems. There's no real conflict. Are there conflicts at times in the ocean? Absolutely. But what they bring forth is an energy literally to help us elevate what the possibilities are for our own energy, and to see and live in a world, if the truth is that we do create our world based on our thoughts and our emotions and our feelings, then part of it is our responsibility on a certain level. Or I don't even want to say responsibility, let's just say choice. Choice, I think, is a better word for us humans. Then it's our choice. Do we want to raise our vibration? And it was so interesting sitting with them this morning and tuning in with them, because it really made me realize for myself, like, what is my own commitment? And it was like, oh my God, my commitment is just to live at the highest vibration I can live at. So that means the foods that I eat and how I interact with people. And if other people have things going on that have nothing to do with me, like, it's not for me to judge it or condemn it or really get involved in it or get taken out by it. It's just my job to send love and compassion. And so what they were also sharing was that is literally that frequency that they live in. Imagine if you went and you saw a symphony, right? And that symphony, it's playing all of this music and you're hearing, like, you're wrapped up in this whole vibration of it. They said that's basically what they live in, and that's really what they want to share with us about what's possible for humanity and each one of us. Even if we have experienced challenges or hardships or traumas or misunderstandings or any kind of abuse, that this is what is possible, that we can still raise our energy and vibration to if we choose to. So that was the overall message as I sat with them this morning. And it was just fascinating because I wasn't hearing it, like, I was hearing it in English so I could understand it, but seeing it in terms of the language of light and almost like the harmonics of the spheres, that they live in it. So they can communicate to me on a level of English that I understand, but my cells were able to understand that feeling of light that just came in. And that was just what they really want to share with us. They want to share that experience of, hey, even with everything that's going on the planet, we still have a choice, and it's up to each one of us, just like it's up to each member of the dolphin pod, right? The energy that they bring to the show, kind of, it's up to us the same way. And regardless of whatever we've been through, and probably, and I'm not like advocating, go out and go swim with a dolphin, but I am saying, like, the possibility that exists that if you do want to raise your frequency to that level, have an experience of swimming with them. I mean, I know Dr. Kara mentioned too, like, it totally changed her life. And I love what she said about the looking in that dolphin's eye, because when I was holding this baby dolphin in my arms and I looked in its eye, the first thing that came to me was I had met a pod of dolphins in Hawaii, and they were in a captive pen. And they said, if any time you ever come across an animal that's injured or you need to help soothe them, literally just start humming Amazing Grace. They said that is the universal key, that every species on this planet understands the harmonics in that frequency. And literally, we landed up naming her Amazing Grace because as I looked into her eye, I'd remembered what the dolphins in Hawaii had told me, which is completely, different experience. But as soon as we started humming that to her, and this is like a wild live dolphin, like, she had never been around people. So that experience too of looking in her eye and humming this to her, allow her frequency to know that she was safe, was just extraordinary. So this is really what they want us to know, that we always have the choice, and that the possibility of experiencing bliss and joy, it is always available to us no matter what the circumstances, and we can always elevate ourselves to that place. So that was their message for us this morning. So shall we get into questions now?
Beautiful. Yeah. Are you ready? What was, so did you answer the question about the ley lines and the crystalline grid?
Okay, so this is how they see it and they look at it. So this is Allecia, still me. I've not become a dolphin just yet, although I may have been one in a past life. But this is me looking through their eyes and their awareness and their perspective of how they see the ley lines. So they say they're very aware that everything on the planet runs on a grid. Just like we have the physical energy grid on our planet, like for our energy structures and how, power lines run and how we're able to get electricity. So there is an interstellar grid that it's an interesting thing, because the way that they see it, it's like they see the overlay on the planet, but they also see the inner lay on the planet, because they traverse those lines. So to a human eye, we might not physically see the ley line, but to a dolphin's eyes, because they're seeing the energy of it, they track and they follow these lines in a what's like, I don't want to say navigation is not the right word, but when migration, they follow these lines in a systematic migratory pattern. Just how the whales kind of like migrate. Dolphins don't migrate to the same degree that the whales do, but the dolphins more, because there's so many more dolphins than there are whales. They're kind of like, they work with the ley lines in like their specific region, where the whales, when they do the ley line, so they will make like huge migratory travels from one end of the planet to the other end. The two, they work in harmony. Actually, the dolphins and the whales are actually working in harmony, and when their echolocation goes out, it literally, just like the way we would listen to music, and how they say that music soothes the savage beast. There's a frequency in it that creates a sense of balance and harmony. And so it's really important, the way that this planet was set up, that we be careful with how much we are interfering with their abilities to hear what they need to hear, what they need to listen to be able to tune into the subtle shifts on the planet, because they do work with literally reinforcing these ley lines with their communication skills. And I know that there is not a huge way to prove that, with like chemical or biological sciences, but they're showing this to me as this is like that quantum science. So we can go and we can listen to certain pods, we can watch for certain things. This is a bigger picture that we would literally have to live 24/7 on the water, and also be able to tune in on a level that almost transcends our five senses in order to be able to understand. So when we do that breathing and when we enter that quantum field, it's easier for us to transcend what we humans have as our five senses, that needs things to be categorized in a certain way that we can understand. What they're sharing with us is, there's a reason why they say you humans only use 10% of your brain. they're wanting to help us see the bigger picture if we allow ourselves to just let go of those five senses and are able to tune into some of our higher levels of senses. So I hope that answers that. I don't fully understand like the very specific, like what each dolphin is doing, but they're showing it to me more as a collective, and then more how there's this like incredible weaving of energies that happen interspecies wise as well.
So one of the things we wanted to focus on today was the experience of being a dolphin, and focusing on questions of like, what's it like to be you? So Dana asks, do they like people they come across?
Okay, so here's how they're responding to that question. They said, everything is always individual. It's just like, if you came upon a pod of 50 dolphins, are you going to like every single dolphin? You might as a human, because you're so like, oh, dolphins! But if you got to know each individual one, some you might like, some you might think like, oh, that one's a brat, or I don't know, we're just not each other's cup of tea. So they're saying it really is an individuated situation, just like humans, when it's a one-on-one piece, right? But understand something, dolphins hold a consciousness, like there's no judgment, there's no criticism of humans, right? There is basically, what they're reading is our energy and our integrity. What they are with us, they're more kind of like fascinated by us. They're interested in our species. They're interested in like what each individual is really about. And because they are such highly attuned beings, when I had first swam with the dolphins and I had my first experience, this dolphin started beaming golden energy to my stomach. And I was kind of shocked because that was not what I was expecting. And I was like, what are you doing? And she said, what do you think I'm doing? I was like, I don't know, but I just feel like you are doing something and you were like actually healing my stomach. So the dolphins kind of function on a quantum level. It's like, it's just in their system. It's how they function. It's who they are. They're just constantly raising the vibration. And, if we look at that and translate that to our planet and who and what, if we talk about healers, what does a healer do? They're constantly just shifting energy, right? So the dolphins don't look at us from the standpoint, I mean, some of them think that we're funny. Some of them think we're cute. Some of like they get our truest intentions of who we really are. But for them, the majority of what they look at is almost like, do I want to interact or not? Is this going to be openly received? And it's almost always in a frequency. There's always a healing taking place. And not like, oh, you're sick, there's something wrong with you, I have to fix you. It's just that they're constantly bringing us into a state of a higher vibration. So they do like us. Obviously, just like anybody else, there's some people that if you're going to go out and swim with dolphins, intentionally, it's rare that you're going to hurt them. But when we get into the topics of like somebody mentioned what happens in Taiji we also have to understand that a lot of the native cultures, they don't see the same spirituality there. They might in certain ways, like the Inuit people, if they go out to hunt, it's a very sacred ritual. And they hunt not to take tons and tons of animals, but to provide for their village for the entire winter. Something like a Taiji, where it's commercially based and there is not a lot of consciousness. What the dolphins say is they don't judge these people, but as more people see this and the consciousness raises, they're allowing them to sacrifice themselves so that there creates eventually an end to all of that killing, that it raises the vibration enough that we don't harm other sentient beings who feel pain. So they just want us to know, like, they don't have a judgment on it. But of course, our mothers and fathers and babies upset, no question. I mean, it's, they are aware of it, but they just don't hold any grudges about it.
So Oksana wonders why they kick them out of their packs to form newborns and also injured or sick members.
They said there's a part of nature that is just purely nature. So it's not that they don't care. It's just that you have to remember nature is always going to do its best to function at its highest level. So if there are beings that are injured or sick, it's not that nature does not care. It's just that nature does not have the time to stop doing what it's doing to accommodate certain reasons for whatever the deformities are. Not every being, just like with not every human being, we're souls that come to have experiences. Sometimes those experiences take us through an entire life. Sometimes those experiences were just to incarnate in a womb. Sometimes it was to come through that womb, but then that experience ends. So they don't see any of this with any kind of judgment or human perspective. The human perspective is kind of like, I want to save everything. The animals don't function in that way. They will do what they can, but then they also understand they need to get back to the present moment and they need to function in what they're functioning in. So they grieve just like we would, and they also move on. But there also was that one orca within the past year that was in a bay, I think in Alaska, that had been carrying her baby around. That was so clearly a sign of her, not only her grieving, but her trying to help us look at what human behaviors are doing to the others. So, yeah.
So Dana's wondering, do they love each other, have mates, friends, and how long do they stay with their kids?
Absolutely yes on all of those. How long they stay with their kids, again, that one I think is going to go more back to the biology that Dr. Kara talked about, because it's not, it's just like how often, sometimes human kids stay with their parents for 5 years. Sometimes they're with them for 25 years or way longer than some of the parents had anticipated, so it's completely individual. And I think that part of it they're explaining, there is not a spirituality to that. There's more a physicality to that and an actual biology. And again, like Dr. Kara said, it's like, some dolphins come in, some dolphins go out, just like with wolf packs, Sometimes you are born to a family of origin, but that doesn't mean that always stays your family of origin. Just like humans, when we go off to college or when we get married.
So Lauren wants to know how you're tuning into their energy right now. She says, do you have a photo of them that you look at to connect, or how are you finding their energy from afar?
I just literally drop into the quantum energy field in my own body. So I open that up and I just call them in. So it's like I'm here in Montana, they're in the oceans, and it's sort of like connecting with the collective oversoul of them. It's not necessarily tuning into a specific dolphin. It's tuning into the dolphin consciousness and respectfully honoring their way and their beings, and being able to just have a conversation back and forth, because we've opened those lines and those channels like 25 years ago, and they're still working.
And Cherry wants to know if the dolphins have any suggestions for how we can help the situation in Taiji.
The greatest thing that we can do about the situation in Taiji is number one, they said, don't contribute to our harm by thinking like bad things or bad thoughts, because everything that does, it's more like a ricochet. They said, send love and compassion, because the dolphins themselves understand the process of it. It's not necessarily that they like it, but they understand it on a higher level, that they came as a species, that part of them would sacrifice their lives. They get out of their dolphin bodies and they jump back into new ones. But to up level the consciousness and awareness and the compassion for all life. So it's having compassion for the dolphins, but it's also having compassion for the hunters and sending love, and being able to recognize that everybody, every being, every animal, every species that comes to this planet, they come here to learn their own aspects of whatever they needed to learn. So if we started judging what aspects we think that they should learn, instead of we've learned it, so we're holding the compassion, we're holding love. It's like the monks in Tibet, right? They hold that compassion, that wisdom 24/7. It doesn't matter what is going on in their outside world, but they're constantly cycling through their beings. That's what we are actually being asked to do also, is to hold the compassion that this is changing. We are speaking up about it, but we also have to be recognizing that every being gets to move through their process, and we can bring about, the more and more that the collective recognizes we don't choose this anymore, then that's what will actually make it start to go away. But even in that, they're asking, please do not judge, do not hold any dogma. Even in the political arenas, it's like, stop with all the judgment about Democratic or Republican, right? Just see things from the space of love and compassion, that these beings are growing through stuff. And it's actually a good thing that all these things are coming up, because they're no longer being hidden under the surface, and people are becoming more and more aware. And that raises our consciousness collectively, and that allows us to create a world that we're actually choosing to live in.
So not very practical, I have to say.
Well, when you get into that realm, and because their consciousness is so expanded, the thing that they ask us to come back to every single day is our breath. And also the recognition that anywhere we want to go and judge or be angry, take it back to compassion. And then from a place of compassion, ask, what is the action that I could take? What is the thing that I could do to shift this or make a difference?
Okay. So, Sherry, I hope I answered the question, and maybe it's the inspired action is the answer.
Yeah.
To go into that place inside of you of compassion and openness, knowing that everything is okay, and yet we can still want to change things. So what's the action that I can take from that place?
Yeah.
So Cherry, go ahead, and if you're still here, just put in a note and see if that helps you.
Yeah, and I'm not condoning or saying it's acceptable or permissible of what's happening in 5G. What I'm simply saying is they've collectively agreed to allow this to happen for a greater growth level of all beings and all species. And part of that growth is, it's like what the dogs explained about unconditional love. Just because you have unconditional love doesn't mean you can kill me, harm me, and there's no boundaries. There's boundaries. But the boundaries can't be retaliatory. The boundaries have to be clearly, fiercely because of unconditional love. Can't be because of hatred and anger. So it's us practicing that, and like Dr. Kara said, putting that into inspired and applied action. Who can you write to? Can you write to a ministry? Can you, make it a point of focus in a group that you're within? Like, hey, can we hold and raise the vibration here?
So we're kind of going over the hour.
Yeah.
Can we do one more question?
Yep. Last question.
So Oksana wants to know, how do Navy sonars and 5G disrupting their connection to crystalline grid and ley lines? Is there a way for them to override it?
It's big. I mean, it's why we're seeing so many dolphins and whales showing up, on shores, because the sonar is the human employed sonar is knocking them off of their sensitivity to the grids. It's also changing the grids and kind of morphing the grids a little bit, which is also why we're seeing some of the things we're seeing, not just on the planet for climate change, but also what happens in the oceans actually affects the planet. So there isn't right now a way for them to override it. The best things that we can do, again, are to really start to tune in and to connect. This is what we're going to do tomorrow, is talk about animal communication as a means of, being able to dive deeper and connect with them on a daily basis, so that it's going to take all of us, really, like all of us, to wake up to our own power, to our own awareness, to what our own actions can be, so that collectively we can be shifting this. So, in terms of that, there's not a very clear message just yet. It's more like we as humans need to really take a stand with the Navy and with oil and with drilling, and we have to look at all of the aspects of how we live our own lives that also contribute to that, things that we might not even think about. And how do we start, not doing those things, so we don't need to be running sonar in the oceans, and we don't need to be having ships and equipment and defensive things to protect this place or that place or the other place. And how do we really start to create a much more unified grid that does not require that technology being used in those ways that are actually harming the animals and harming the dolphins?
So Oksana, I hope that answers your question. All right, any final message from the dolphins for us today, Allecia?
Really, they just want to continue to uplift our frequency. They would love to engage with us. So whether it's in the oceans or whether it's just at home and we're thinking about them, just like I can do right now, it's a very uplifting experience for both of us, because once we get past like the 3D of you can only, see, taste, touch, smell, then what starts to happen is you get into a space that you're always living in communion. If you're always living in communion, then the choices you make, the actions you take, the words you speak, the way you treat yourself, the way you treat the planet, it constantly rises up. And so that's what they really want us to know, that we keep focusing on the rising of our frequency and vibration to bliss, not as an escape, but as an actual state of being that raises everything up.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So thank you guys, and thank the dolphins. And we're going to be back tomorrow, 2:00 Pacific time. Now, just so that you know, we do have a trip planned in September, from September 15th to September 19th with the Wild Spotted Dolphins of Bimini. So if you have an interest, please feel free to shoot us your, if you want to leave your email on here, we can get back to you. Or if you want to leave, shoot me a message on Animal Healer and Dr. Kara, and I will get back to you if you have an interest in that, and we will share more about that with you later. But we are so happy that you're here, and we're so grateful for hopefully taking you through a journey from biology to bliss and really pulling all of this, together in a beautiful way that allows you to feel more connected to the quantum field and to the dolphins and to yourself.
Beautiful. And the journey continues tomorrow. We're going to be focusing on animal communication and wisdom from the animals to become our best selves. So how can we grow and really embody this message of being that compassionate and taking inspired action from that place of compassion inside of us? So how do we do the nuts and bolts of that? How do we make that happen? So that's step 2 in this process, and we'll be back here tomorrow to share more about that.
Thank you guys so much for joining us for this experience, and we'd love your feedback. We'd love to know how it went for you. Thank you for those of you guys who have already shared, and we hope you just have a really blissful rest of your day.
Well, hopefully see you all here tomorrow. Thanks for stopping by, everybody.
Yeah, and feel free to share too. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.